But just a note about pesticides and herbicides. 90% of corn, soybeans, and cotton in the U.S. are genetically modified to be resistant to pesticides and herbicides. Again, it's that slow idea of, well, why don't you do this, or why don't you do that, or why don't you do this? Over time, that has led into this huge myth that we need that stuff. Farmers might, in order to make their profit, that's true, or break even, but that's understandable. However, we're caught in this problem of, well, how are you going to manage with no water, right? So something's got to give. Does anybody know the story of the Salton Sea? No? Okay, well, in 1905, apparently it was a huge engineering issue where they had let a portion of the Colorado River break dam, and it all led into the Salton Sea. And in this dry area, a lowland environment that just immediately filled up with water. Most of the water of the Colorado River was just depleted at that point until they had fixed it. But the problem over time became, it was a huge resort thing. Elvis, I think, had a home there, and it was just a huge popular tourist attraction for quite a while, throughout the 50s. But eventually, with pesticides and herbicides leaching into the water source, it killed off the entire fish population. There's only one type of fish that stays there now. And it's a huge problem with the evapotranspiration that takes place. It's drying up, and it's revealing a lot of hazardous chemicals as a result of all of the pesticides and herbicides into the atmosphere. And this is a huge smog problem for LA. Each time the wind comes through from the Salton Sea area, it picks this dry stuff up and ships it to LA. So a huge problem for California, but we're not, free from it either, about whatever happened in the turn of the 20th century. So just shows you the deleterious effects of pesticides and herbicides and the continued use of it over time. What is it doing to our groundwater supply, aquifer? We should be mindful of this. Very concerned about it too. So if you did want to integrate a natural style or a dry farm system into your plot that you're currently farming, I highly recommend only using pesticides or herbicides on the portion that you're farming, and maybe not even do that, because you're going to see over time whether or not it's working. You may convince yourself that the dry farming doesn't work, so you may want to consider wholesale just not doing it at all, because if you really do want to make it transmit, it takes a full commitment, to trying this method. Try it somewhere where it's completely isolated. Maybe take a whole portion of your farm that is completely isolated from downwind or wind exposure to any types of pesticides nearby. But try that first to see if you really are interested in testing the hypothesis of whether or not this dry farming thing works for you. But it has for me, it has for others, it has for everyone else who's done it throughout the valley in micro plots. Top-down effect, decomposition, water retention, being mindful of the soil, carbon capture, more foliage, better, because it's storing carbon in the soil.